pre-release weekend, but right after that, I started in playing. I was playing at a store in Chicago called Dice Dojo for about the first year. And it was a good group there, good people. Had some Tumblr friends that were part of that group too. Some card players that were interested, and we would average somewhere between 10 and 12 people each week for meetups. And this was just after Premiere had came out. Canterlot Knights was involved in that too. So we were playing there. I was playing there for about I'd say 7-8 months. When the first store championship came around and the build up for Gen Con came around too, I also started playing down in St. Louis, meeting up with those people. That's actually how I got my first bid to Gen Con, was going down to a store in Collinsville, Illinois. And the guy won the tournament and won the entry into Continentals, couldn't make it, so he just gave it to me. And that's how I got into my first Continentals. But shortly after that, I had moved out of the town I was living in at the time because I got a new job. And it actually made it a little more difficult to meet up with everyone because I was further away. The group at Dice Dojo was kind of starting to fade off as well. And so I didn't really have much of a place to play the game. There was a game shop in the town I lived in, but didn't really receive too much support from the owner there, which sucks. So it's fast forward to January 2015, and I decided, okay, I'm going to try and get something locally because I want to keep playing this game. It's a good game, but I need to try to build a base around here. While I was doing this, I was still playing down in St. Louis. So I had a couple of the St. Louis guys come up and help me run demos in the central Illinois area that weekend. Or one weekend. We did it at 2 stores, and we got off to a good start. We had some interest. Just posting wherever we could, like, hey, we're demoing the game, come play, come check this out. And that's kind of how the group in Central Illinois got started. We were running demos, and then it turned into weekly meetups and play events, and we've been going strong since then.
Yeah, and that actually is probably like one of the easier ways. I've talked with a lot of players, and honestly, just going to your local store with a demo, or we have these theme decks. I know that people have probably forgotten about these so-called theme decks. I mean, what are they?
They're old now.
They are extremely old, but they are great for getting people into the game, just bringing your cards to a store and just sitting there. And actually, I know that Joking Luna is thinking about doing this at one of his local stores to get his Lafayette group back up and running. But that's definitely one way to get a group started, is bring demos, bring your decks to a store, and just ask around to see if anyone would be interested. I mean, the worst that someone could say is say no to learning a new game. But typically gamers are definitely always interested in learning a new game, especially if their friends are playing that said game.
I will admit, from our end and what we found locally, in person, I'm not trying to throw cold water on everything, but trying to recruit people in stores has not worked that well for us because it's been an uphill climb in a way, because we have to compete with people who are Magic players and they're just headstrong and deadlocked into Magic, and they won't break away from that because they either don't want to spend money on a new game, or well, that's mainly it. They don't want to spend money on a new game, or they see that it's ponies and they're turned off by that. There have been some people we've been able to get demos from, but then we'd never hear from them again. So I'm not trying to be a downer for this, but what I'm trying to say is even if you do all you can to promote the game, you're going to have an uphill climb, and it's going to be a struggle at times to get people to come in. Well, what's worked for us is just posting on Facebook and Reddit, just going to the people that you know will play,
Right.
or going to areas where you think people are going to play. When I did the demos and all that, I posted on Reddit saying, "Hey, come to this
Right.
area if you want to play." I even posted in some local brony groups saying that this was a thing and this was happening. And
Yeah.
there was a large brony Facebook group where I got a little pushback on because people were just outright rejecting the idea of the game in the group.
Yeah.
So not only you're gonna get a lot of, I guess it's not going to be an easy climb. I'll just say that. But
Well,
you
and
just
nothing
you just
is
got to keep trying.
Yeah, and nothing is ever an easy climb, but maybe my story will help shine some ray of hope for the MLP CCG. I When I first got into the MLP CCG, I was looking for people to play and everything, and when I got into the groups, I discovered that there was this supposed Indianapolis group, and I didn't know. Let's just say the polite term is that the main six broke up and the elements of harmony no longer worked. That's the most polite way I can possibly say it. And I came in and I was looking for people to play in my area. And I learned about Joking Luna, who's over in Lafayette. Well, we decided to hang out one night. I made him dinner and everything. And basically, my determination to find someone to play was that I decided to put forth as much energy as I could in posting to the groups, posting to the Reddit and everything, just looking for someone. And by searching out, talking with people from the former Indianapolis group and everything, eventually I met people and we started to kind of build the group a little bit, and then we started getting slightly more players, and it's gotten to the point where, if people don't know, the Indianapolis group had practically disintegrated.
Yeah.
And it completely disintegrated for 3 years. It did not exist. And I come along and I'm like, all right, I want to find people to play. That was my first instinct. And that's where, if you feel like that there's no one in your area that plays the game, keep trying to reach out. Find out if someone lives in the next town over. Find if someone lives, within an hour of you. A playgroup doesn't have to be restricted to your town alone. It can be restricted to several towns. The Illinois group is all of Illinois, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we've our two main bases are in Peoria and Bloomington. We used to go to Galesburg for meetups, but we just kind of stopped because the store owner just wasn't really receptive to it, and the other option for a game store there was in a mall that was dying. We've also gone to the suburbs of Chicago, and we're even in the capital in Springfield. We've gone there too. It's just you got to find where to go, and we're still looking at new stores to try and go to as well.
Yeah, and right now TJ and Pirate Dash and I are actually working both as TOs for both of our respective areas, and we're also working together because I feel like that it's important for both the Illinois group and the Indianapolis group to kind of work together, because what's happened with the game is that it has moved mostly online, but there's no substitute to playing in person. And for some people, it's so hard to find people in their area that will play. If you feel like that there is no one in your area, maybe the best thing to do is to see if you have a friend that plays card games or whatever, and just see if they'd be interested. Ask them or whatever. And if you don't have that, and I know that a lot of players are struggling trying to get people to actually play the game, or none of their friends want to play the game or whatever, maybe, you might see if you post it into the Hey Canterlot Nights. I must have made 5 or 6 different posts in that Facebook group alone saying, anyone else near Indianapolis that plays the MLPCCG?
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned the town. And sometimes that's what you have to do to get a group started.
Like, I'll reference the meetup we had yesterday. Granted, we had a big meetup, and it was for a special event and such, but we had a few curious people because there was such a big group of people playing. And I know the online tournaments are great, and I know that they're helping keep the game alive and that they have their place, but I will always argue that in person and in store playing and actually getting out there and showing people this game trumps whatever goes online, because it shows people that there is a fun game that's out there. It shows store owners that there are people that want to play this game. So while online tournaments are great, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them, you have to have the in-person meetups.
Yes, and I absolutely agree with that. Actually, about yesterday, I was noticing there was like 2 other tables of Magic players. I think we had them beat.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were beating Magic the Gathering yesterday, which was insane.
A lot of the weather might have played a role in that too.
Yeah, and I had reached out to my own group. Unfortunately, there were a lot of people that had to work that day. We would have had 2 more people come if it wasn't for the fact that they had to work. But I'm striving, like, I have a game store now that they actually have product, but it's like really, really old product. It's like They have Crystal Games, Canterlot Nights, and Premier, but they have agreed to allow us to host tournaments there, where I would tell them the rules and everything, and we'd basically start a tournament. And that is how we kind of so that actually has a backstory. A few months ago, I was talking with someone that was supposed to be helping me run the group, who was just doing nothing for it. And I decided to say, all right, I'm going to call a store. I like this particular store. It's my favorite store. They have product. They have theme decks. They had sleeves and deck boxes, believe it or not. And I called them up and I said, hey, we might have 4 people, once a month that want to play this game. And the store was so receptive. They were just like, yeah, well, we got the product. We could do the prize support. And, you guys just pay $5 per person. And we had, for our first tournament, after the first official Indianapolis tournament after 3 years of a group being disintegrated, had 4 people show up for a core format tournament.
Yeah.
Which, is miraculous that, one person could potentially rebuild a group. But there it is. If you've had groups in the past in your area, you can rebuild them.
Right. We're lucky we didn't have to go through a situation like that here locally. You kind of led to another thing that I wanted to talk about, because you talked about how the store owner in your area was receptive and helpful for you guys.
Yeah.
It is of the utmost importance that you have to get your store owners in to buy into this too, and having supportive store owners is something that's very huge and will go a long way for your group. The reason why we're still able to play in Peoria and Bloomington, maybe not as much as we used to, but we still have store owners that are willing to help us out and willing to give us the space and willing to give us a place to play. And if product's out, they will get the product for us, and we will buy it up from them. It's kind of why we failed in Galesburg, because the store owner was not that really receptive to it. They were all Magic, really. Which I don't blame them for it, but Magic's not the only card game out there. There's more to it. But having store owners who have your back and who want to see you succeed and who are willing to help you get there will go a long way for your group. Exactly.
Yeah. And even though, our group, the Indianapolis group, is just starting to get back on its feet, I've been working tirelessly trying to make sure that we have a new Facebook page, we have everything up and running. And that's the other thing, too. Having a Facebook group for your area really helps. If you feel like that there's not a lot of people in your area, maybe starting a Facebook page dedicated to the card game could actually help get you to where you need to go. Because if you post, if you get that group up and running, you might be able to pull people from your area into that.
Right. I found that Facebook is our best way for communication. Because that seems to be where all the card players are going to be. They're on Facebook, and different facets of the fandom have different areas where they converse and where they can get the most hits. Artists like me, I use that term loosely, but it still counts. Tumblr and DeviantArt and Twitter, that works for me being an artist. But if I want to do card game things, it's Facebook or Reddit. That's where I've found the most success in each area.
Yeah. And knowing where your audience is and where the players currently are is how you're going to be able to successfully, accomplish getting your group started. And I know that Commentaries Magic will be releasing information at some point about where the new TOs are, but digging for actual players can really be, and this is one of the things where it comes down to, are you willing to have the determination, the stamina to build a group and run it? Because not everyone is fit for that role. Most players just want to find people to play in their area so they can have that face-to-face interaction. But if you're just looking to find players, post it to the Facebook page. Go to Hey Canterlot Knights and just say, hey, anyone near this town in this state looking for players in my area? That's what I did. That's how I found people.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And I took it a step further and ended up wanting to bring tournaments back to the area because I had that drive.
Yeah, you got to be motivated to try, and you have to stay motivated through what is going to be some tough times as well, because it's not going to be easy. People don't have a lot of spending money anymore. People just. It's going to be tough to convince a Magic or a Yu-Gi-Oh player to try a new game, partly because of that. So you're going to have some struggles, you're going to have some roadblocks, but it's all about how much effort you put into it.
Yeah, and I come from a Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic background, and I'll tell you that if you had asked me to learn to play this game like back in the year 2009, I would have laughed and said, no, I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player. I will always be a Yu-Gi-Oh player. But both of those games had become stale for me, and that's why I ended up getting more into ponies. Plus, once I saw the show, I really, really liked it. I kind of was, really, really involved, and yeah, I was doing a Twilight Freakout for and even worse, I was doing also a Rainbow Dash Freakout. If I have a slide for that, if I can find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was doing I was freaking out all over the place, of trying to find people to play. I'll tell you, it took me a month to finally find that person it's in my area, and finally I was able to calm down and relax a little bit. But you have to be driven, and that's what it's going to take to find people in your area to be able to continue playing.
Yeah.
So, and I know that we both, Pirate Dash and I, have a lot planned for our groups, but I know that we have, other groups. I know the California group is fairly strong, but they've recently had to merge two of their groups, I believe. A lot of groups are trying to merge together and try to help one another, and that is what the game, I feel like, needs, versus having a whole bunch of like tiny groups. What we really need is like a whole bunch of like people that can play maybe once a month together, where we can get like 10 to 15 people, because that way we can generate more interest. And as far as the interest thing goes, I know that a lot of players have always said that it's ponies. So Magic players and Yu-Gi-Oh players aren't going to be interested in it. You want to know how I describe the game?
How?
I say it has really, really interesting mechanics without a stack system. Do you like games with fascinating mechanics?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah. A lot of gamers, and because I've been a gamer my whole life, one of the things I love about card games and video games and everything is the mechanics section. And so when a game has as many mechanics as the MLP CCG, where it's a mechanic that's not like Magic the Gathering, it's not like Yu-Gi-Oh, or it's not like other games. So I've always found that the attempt to score more points than your opponent versus stuff like Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, where you're attacking the other person, I find is a more positive outlook on card games, and it definitely gives it an alternate feel. So I know that a lot of players are looking for people in their area. You might be in a really remote region of the United States where you're struggling to find players, and that doesn't always help for you, and it can be difficult to find people when you're in a really remote region. And that's where you might consider looking at what's the nearest store to you. If it's an hour away but there's no pony players there, well, what about if you go 2 hours away? Can you make that drive? Can you find a way to get 2 hours away to an actual another player? And that's stuff you have to look at.
When I started playing, like I mentioned earlier, I was playing at Dice Dojo. From where I lived, that was a 2.5 hour drive just to get to the store each week. And admittedly, it was a struggle for multiple reasons. I was working a third shift job at the time, so I would work the third shift, go home, shower, maybe nap for like an hour or so, and then hop up, get in the car, make the 2.5 hour drive to downtown Chicago, find the place to park, go play for a few hours, hang out with the friends a little bit after, then go back home and do my next shift at work. It was a struggle, quite honestly, but it was a fun game and it was worth it. But yeah, that was in the early days, and it seems like we're kind of regressing back to that in a way where you don't have too many stores or places to play. So you got to find those locations
Yeah.
far away.
Yeah. And that's why I feel like it's been moving on to the online community, but we still need those places, even if you can get it to where you can meet up maybe once a month. A lot of times I found that some people just can't make it every week. And when you're first starting
Right.
out, you don't want to so one way to definitely get people interested is go to a store. If you have one other person, two other people that you play with, go to a store. By the way, stores will let you do this as long as you don't charge for entry. You can actually bring a booster box that you bought to a store. Now, not everyone can do this because I understand that there are money restrictions for everyone, but I did this twice. I brought 2 boxes of Sequestria. I brought it to the store, and I said, let's all just have a sealed draft. Everyone gets to keep the cards. And, doing something like that can actually draw in new players. We actually had someone in one of the drafts who had never even heard of the game. We tried our best to show him how to play. He pulled a Rainbow Dash and First Mate Mullet.
Yeah.
And you know what? Honestly, we were worried that we'd never see him again. But he has a Rainbow Dash First Mate Mullet. So I'm hoping that, he'll come back. Maybe we'll see him again. And this was at game time, so maybe we will run into him again. But by doing that, you can interest new players because you know what players like more than card games?
What's that?
Free cards, regardless of the game.
But I'll admit this too. We've had a couple times where we've given out cards to people to try to encourage them to build their own collections and to get into the game, and we'd never see them again. So it's tough.
Yeah, honestly, I never worry too much about whether I'll see that person again because maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Yeah.
But I feel like that the fact that he has the cards now, there's a slim chance that one day he'll be going through his collection. Maybe it's 2 years from now or whatever, and he'll be like, I might want to try this game again. And they might come back. And that's why I think it's a worthwhile investment. I feel like that we're also worked up in the short term of the game, that we're forgetting that this game, these cards are going to be around for a long time to come. If you can convince someone to join a free draft for the game, maybe 2 years from now, maybe they'll come back. Maybe a year, maybe a few months. You just don't know. But you've gotten the cards into their hands. And that I feel is more important for the game because it might encourage them later on to relook at it. And
I could see that.
Yeah. And that's another way to build people to build up your group is if you have an excess of comments, because we all have excess of comments. I know I do. Yeah. And, just having it where you do an uncommon common draft for anyone that wants to play, great. You're giving out free cards, and people might come back for it. Any other thoughts from you, Pirate Dash?
And in recruiting people,
Yeah.
I think we've pretty much covered everything that you can with it.
All right.
It seems like it's even tougher to try to get people to stay. If we could talk about that for a little bit.
Yep.
We've had some good success keeping our group strong. Like they don't show up as frequently as they used to. We've had some people drop and just quit the game for a multitude of reasons, but we still have a core base that shows up, and we still have some good players that show up. Granted, we're about to lose one of our biggest ones, but still, even with that loss, we're still going to be able to continue. We're still going to be able to keep going. We're still going to have a good presence and just um, be able to keep the thing going. One thing that we try to do is, because admittedly, it just gets boring showing up each week to have just tournaments. If you don't have the ability to do a draft or a sealed and you're just playing core or harmony each week, it gets a little tough and it gets a little boring for people to stick around. So we try to change things up. We try to have different deck building tournaments. We try to have different events. I know one thing we're doing in our group next month, we're going to have a Christmas tournament with some stipulations. That's going to be a common, uncommon, fixed card tournament. As I like to call it, cuff tournament, because not to be picky, but I hate the P word that people use for that type of format. I don't know why, it just gets on my nerves. But whatever.
That's fine.
I think it's because it came from Magic. I think that's why. And I'm not saying I hate Magic, but let's try to separate ourselves from Magic just a little bit.
Why don't you drain all their magic power like Tyrek did the Twilight?
Yeah, I wish. That could go for a whole another rant, but we'll say that for another day. But yeah, you got to come up with ways to keep people active and still interested, even though you've got a lot of hills to climb. And I don't think we can announce it publicly yet, but I know an email we got recently from Commentary is Magic just took out a major hurdle for us. So
yeah.
Hopefully that'll bring people. And it sounded like when I told people about it last night, they were open to it and they got some positive reaction. So
yeah, and one of the things that I do know, this game we're actually kind of, at least in my area, we're actually increasing in members. And that, because my group has such a kind of, Sombra type history. That's the polite way to put it. It's amazing that I've been able to get as many people together as I have. And it's when you're trying to keep players, there's a lot of things you got to look at. And this is where becoming a TO becomes not just a management issue of the organizing the tournaments and preparing for the tournaments and so forth, making sure the store knows you're coming, making sure that you have everything you need when you go to the tournament, making sure it's on a time where you're not going to conflict with it. Because one of the things I do is I especially like to have my tournaments on days where Magic is not happening, because I don't want to have to conflict with them. But
now, are you talking as like a regular Magic meetup, or just when Magic has a major event?
When they have a major event, I try to avoid.
That's what we've been doing for years. Like I will actively scour when Magic has a pre-release or a big event, and try not to schedule on that date. But I will be honest too. Like, the only one I will not schedule a meetup for is when they have a pre-release. Because I know Magic has their big championships, their regionals, their whatever they call them. We will still play that day because our stores will still have space for us. We're lucky in that regard. But yeah, like the only time we will not meet up is if we know Magic has a pre-release that weekend, because that's the weekend we know we're not getting a table. Yeah.
Well, and I was also going to say that in order to keep people around, you have, as the TO, you need to be as friendly as you can be, as nice as you can be, because I found that being a tournament organizer, or just the organizer for an entire group, you become everyone's emotional fallout, basically. People are going to complain about members in the group. People aren't always going to get along. Even in the MLPCCG, there are people that don't get along, and you become kind of the target of everyone's either anger, dislike, and I've been dealing with that. We finally got that resolved in our group.
Can I make a side note here?
Sure.
All the drama that I've seen in the MLP CCG community, all the quibbles and all that, I'm even Tantabus and all that, I would have gladly taken that over all the other drama I've been involved in this fandom with. Tumblr pond drama is awful and terrible. So when I see people quibbling over Tantabus and that's the worst thing people think of, I'm like, that's nothing.
Well, see, I'm unique. I would have loved to have played against Tantabus because I would have. I know I would love it.
No, it was. I'm not. That my thoughts on Tantabus is for another day. I'm just gonna say I didn't have a problem with it like everyone else did. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay. Well, I've always, going back a little bit on track maybe, I feel like that the community is starting to get better. And I feel like that things are kind of looking up for the MLP CCG as well. Maybe not in all areas, but I know that it's starting to recover. And I think my biggest thing is that Sequestria Beyond was actually a good set that helped people actually get back into the game. Because it introduced a lot of newer concepts that were easier to understand. I think that a lot of the Harmony stuff was a little too confusing when starting out, and maybe that's where a lot of confusion happened. I know there were several things that caused, things to happen, but I think things are looking up again.
Okay.
If you want to know why it's looking up, or if you have interest in knowing how much it's looking up and what's coming in the future for the game, I would highly advise people to pay attention to Commentary is Magic. With things that they are working on. I don't want to go too much into the stuff that they have because I try not to overlap with them. But I think that if you want to run a group, just be ready for everything. Be prepared mentally. It's very taxing sometimes. People have your information by that point, and it's like they can contact you at all odd hours of the day. Lord, Celestia knows I've been contacted at 3 a.m. in the morning.
That seems too much.
Yes, it is, because I'm usually asleep at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, well, that's why my phone is off by then.
Yeah. I have gotten messages as late as 1 a.m. and as early as 3. It's like I get messaged at all hours of the day, and some of it is like, when's the next set coming out? When's the next pre-release? When's the next tournament? Are we meeting up? Or it could be as simple as, I want you to kick this person out of the group. And I'm like,
yeah.
It's... You can get contacted for any silly, ridiculous reason as a TO, and it's just, you have to deal with that. And then how you word things back in a text is very important.
Yeah. I guess we're lucky for my group, in a way. We're lucky that we've just never really had drama or any problems. We've got a few players who are very passionate about it, and I'm guilty of that too. I let my emotions run wild, but if that's the worst thing in your group, then you're doing just fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and my suggestion is, once you do become a TO, or if you really want to, and you start having members and stuff, I try to treat each member with respect until they give me a reason not to. And that's an old lesson, is don't be like Flim and Flam, trying to like make it sound all glorious and totally worth paying like all your bits for, because we all know that this game does not need a sales pony. What it needs is someone like Pinkie Pie or Fluttershy. You know.
See, you made the Flim and Flam reference, and that actually reminded. You went in a different direction than what I was thinking, because I know of one group that has been completely killed because you had a couple people who had Flim and Flam actions and would swindle people out of cards. And I don't know if swindle is the right word for it, but they would rig it where they would win all the tournaments and get all the good cards, and they were just the dominating people in that play group, and no one else could seem to win, and it seemed to kill the group off there because you had two people that were basically greedy. Now, to be fair in a way, one of them was the runner-up at the first Continental, so it's not like they didn't know how to play,
right?
But they took advantage of some people, and the effects were too much to overcome. So you got to, and like you were talking, you got to identify who the problem players are, and you've got to deal with it right away.
Yeah. And when it comes down to the people in your group, you know, being like Rarity and being generous to an extent is a really useful thing to do as well. Keeping your group happy is a very, very important thing, because that's going to provide the health of the group. I get asked all the time by my members, you know, take a look at this deck. Give me some suggestions. And I don't go and tear apart their deck card for card. I'm like, I like what you're trying to go for. Let's see if we can't suggest a card that might be just slightly better at what that card does. But keep it within its themes, keep it within its what it wants to do. I don't like tearing apart my members' decks. I want to help their decks, but I want it to be theirs, because I know it's not one of my decks. And that keeps the people in my group happy, because I'm willing to help them out at any time with their cards, with their decks. And that's what you basically have to do to keep the group functioning and so forth. Right.
This reminds me of a conversation I had after Continentals this year at Cider Fest, which was a fun weekend. And as a side note, if you've never been to Cider Fest, you in Milwaukee, you got to go at least once. It's a really fun con.
It is.
Outside of the gaming room. It's a very fun con, and it's a really well put on con.
That opening ceremony was really fun this year, by the way.
Yes. I don't know how much of a fan I was of the music theme, but I could see how much of a success it was. You should have stick around. Yeah, were you around for closing ceremonies?
I unfortunately decided to get in a few more games with Living Silver. I wanted to go to closing ceremonies, but I was like, I'm probably not going to see this guy for a while, and I'm like, I kind of want to play a few games.
Right. Okay. So a conversation. This was a conversation I had with Bugle and Josh, one of the St. Louis guys, after Continentals, because I bounced. I didn't make top 16, and I was not feeling good or happy about that, and tack on the stress of trying to do staff duties that weekend too, and things were just. I was admittedly a mess. It was a conversation I had with Bugle and Josh that kind of just turned things around a bit, where Bugle basically said, so you may not, so you're good at your group, you're good on a regional level, but you can't put it together at Continentals, and that's fine, because look at the success that people in your group have had. and I'll just rattle it off. Continentals 2016, well, we had a much larger field that year. 2 of the top 16 were people from our group, and they were the first ones in our group to break through. Even though I was mad. Well, I was mad because I lost to Tan Abuse in my last match, because I was mad after that. And
Yeah.
if you had played against Tan Abuse, you would know why. But we had 2 guys from our group make the top 16 that year, and that was a good thing. Then next year, we had 5 people from our group make the top 16 in 2017, and the aforementioned Josh, he qualified through our group, so we claimed him,
Right.
and he was runner up. I bowed out in the 16 round. So yeah, so we've had, and then this year, we had a good amount of people from our group do well.
Yeah.
So what he basically said was, even though you might not be the top player in your group, you're helping coach and motivate other people to be the best they can be.
Exactly.
And their success is reflective of you as well, because you're helping them play, and you're helping them get better, and you're helping them get involved. So it's kind of like a coach role.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a good TO leader, like, you might have to accept that you could be the best player in your group, and that's fine. You, on a national level, like online tournaments or continentals, maybe you're not the best there, but you also kind of have to take on that coach role, and help motivate people, because it's for the good of the group.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and this year at Continentals, 4 members of the Indianapolis group. Now I'm including Joking Luna. I see you in chat, and I'm including you in this. Half of our group that was there this year did make top 16, though granted I went farther, but as everyone on this channel who has been paying attention, I did go top 4. And we're actually starting to get towards the end of the stream, guys, so we're going to try to finish up here, and I'm going to try to finish my thought. I helped my group to get to that point. I helped their confidence in what they wanted to accomplish, and I felt that was important. So, I know that you're going to have to go soon, Pirate Dash. And is there anything else that you want to say on the topic?
Of groups?
Yeah.
I think we've covered a lot. And I also talked about this with commentary a couple months back, and that video is also a great video to watch too if you're wanting to learn. But from what I know in my chats with other people in the community, I don't want to say that we're going to get back to the numbers that we once had as a whole, as a community. We might. I would be very happy if we did. But with what I know, I feel like we have a kind of a revival coming, knowing what's coming down the pipeline. So if you're wanting to get back into the game or start up locally, then you've got to make the efforts.
Right.
Online tournaments are great. Like I said this before, I'll say it again. Online tournaments are great. There's nothing wrong with them. It keeps people active. It keeps people playing. I honestly wish more of our guys in our local play group would do the online tournaments. Element, I'm guilty of not playing in them as of late too. And I can understand why some might not. I've had life situations that have held me back. But I honestly wish more of our guys would play online, because it keeps them active. It keeps them going. But you got to keep the in-person groups going. That is going to show. It's going to show a lot of things. It's going to show store owners that there's still a viability to this game, and that there's still people who want to play it, and that this is something worth investing in.
Yeah.
It shows other people, other players at other stores, that this could be a fun game that you get a lot of people to show up and play for. Because I'll admit, when I'm at a store, I'm curiously looking around, seeing what other people are doing and seeing what they're up to, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we've had it happen quite a few times, or other people have shown up and we explained the game to them. They may not stick around. The success rate hasn't been good, but it's putting that thought in there, and it might click one of these times. So yeah, online tournaments are great and all, but without being in person and without being at the stores, I don't think there's a lot there. I don't think there's a deep future for the game. And it's not just me that thinks this. Like, I'll reference someone we don't know. A coworker at my last job who is a huge Magic player. I explained the situation to him. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of online tournaments, and the presence online is better than in person right now, but no one's really playing in stores anymore. And he kind of agreed with me. If you're not playing in store, you don't have a future.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and there is that signs that is happening, but look to the future. There is light at the end of every tunnel. Whether or not the groups come back at their full strength, or not, or at least a little bit, know that there are tournaments coming in the future. Pay attention to Commentary is Magic. They will be releasing info. I don't know when, but they will be releasing info. Anyways, guys, I think that's going to about cover it. As always, this is Drata Arcana at Drata Arcana Gaming. With me is
Pirate Dash, also known as TJ.
All right, and if you're looking for any of... go ahead.
Drata.
Sure.
I completely forgot one other thing.
Sure.
For anyone that's looking back at the stream, and you see the little character on the bottom left, that's a mascot we created for our local little play group. And you don't have to have one, but it's fun to have a mascot to be that cute presence that that you can have as your, quote, spokesperson of the group. Because who doesn't like a cute character telling you what to do?
Well, I can assure you your character's not telling my Alicorn what to do.
No. Well, no.
No.
But yeah, go ahead. But yeah, that. And then one other point. It was one point I also this was a point that I also almost forgot when I talked with Commentary about this, but take pictures of your meetups and post them online to actually show people that you're active and around.
Yes.
Like, show off that you're alive.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and now I'm done.
Okay. Well, if you're looking to get in contact with me, you can always contact me at Drata Arcana Gaming on Facebook, or you can contact me at drata.arcana@gmail.com. And as always, you can find these uploaded on this channel as well as my YouTube page, Drata Arcana. Anyways, every pony and every creature, have a good night.